Texans bringing back a familiar face, movement around the league that makes you kind of wonder, plus a lot of other things to get into. 2 days from when the Texans rookies will speak and will be on the field. It is SNL, Landry Locker, Cody Stoots with you. Shout out to everyone in the chat. Shout out to everyone in the community. Let's just jump right into it. The Texans start the morning off. Diana Rossini. I'm going to call this a tie. I'm going to say Diana Rossini and Jonathan Alexander must have gotten the same text via agent. A lot of y'all don't know that's kind of how that works sometimes. Like if it's a minute off, then they just got the same text from the agent or they were involved in the same group thread. If it's 10 minutes off, maybe someone was a little late to the party. And you got to give the credit to the other person. So we'll call this a tie between Jonathan Alexander of the Chronicle and Diana Rossini of the Athletic. But Foley Fatukasi, the Texans are bringing him back after last season. Kind of an underrated player last year, I thought, as far as his efforts against the run. Didn't know if they would bring him back or not, but they're pretty much bringing back the exact same D-line, interior D-line as they had last year, and they've brought back Sheldon Rankins from the previous. So just the overall thoughts, assessment of Foley being back.
He had some moments as a run stuffer that were really impressive. I mean, I think about some of his performances in the back end of the season when he was fighting through some of the injuries. He had some pretty good moments, and he had some moments where, okay, whatever. Like he looked awesome in training camp. We found out that wasn't him. That was the interior offensive line of the offense. But he didn't stay healthy. He played through injuries. He's clearly tough as nails, and they love a tough player in that room and on that side of the football. And so he gets a crack here after the draft. And I have to wonder if maybe the draft fell a different way, if they drafted maybe an interior defensive lineman earlier than the 7th round. Maybe they don't go down this path. But Fatukasi, for what he brings to the table, and now he's like, I would say he's clearly in the rotation, like not in the conversation to start. That'd be my thought process with it. And he's in there to slow down when the opposing team's trying to run the ball up the middle. And he's got a very clear and defined role, whereas last year it felt like he could have done a little bit more and been on the field more. Now I feel like his opportunity is snap shares potentially smaller and just, hey, go out there and stop the run. That's what you're supposed to do.
Yeah, I think it's kind of like a different level of the Rankins thing where they saw Fatukasi play, and I haven't seen the details of the contract, but I'm assuming it's not what it was last year. Off the top of my head, I think last year was 4.5 million, around 5 for 1 year. I don't know what this one will be. Maybe I'll be wrong, but I think the market kind of spoke to him, and this was probably his ideal situation, and they do like what he brings to the table. Plus, it's kind of a favorable D-line room for him to get playing time in, if we're being completely honest. And I think kind of with Rankins, they had a price for him 2 years ago. That price was higher, and then they brought him back kind of lower than the price point that they allowed him to leave at. So I think they just kind of let the market speak to both of these guys. They bring him back. I don't want to go ahead.
There has to be something about this defensive tackle position that they only want, or I don't know if it's a learning curve or if it's just a certain type of personality that they desire, but them not really willing to stray too far away from the guys that have played for them, it's a little strange to me. Sheldon Rankins, coming up this year, he'll have played here 2 out of the 3 years DeMeco Ryans has been here. That's the same with Tim Settle, if he makes the team this year. That's the same with Mario Edwards. That's the same with Fatukasi. Kurt Hinish has been here the whole, they really haven't, and even really been connected to guys that they're unfamiliar with, really.
Yeah, I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm trying to make like some sense of it. And I think there's 2 things here. Number one, I think you are right that they want guys to do certain things. But number 2, I think there's kind of like, I don't want to call it positional value, but I think you can only invest in so much. Like I think in a perfect world, DeMeco Ryans would love to have like a player like Walter Nolan in this past draft, or someone like an Eric Armstead, because they did try to bring in Eric Armstead. Like let's not forget they did try to do that. But I just think based on what they've invested, they haven't really got around to really needing D-line, and also what they've invested. I don't want to say it minimizes the importance of like having to invest in it. I think it just, I think they just have so much around it to where they're not just going to break bread for it. I think in a perfect world, they would love to be better, but the surroundings are so good. And these guys do know what the hell they're supposed to do, which I think is important on this defense, especially when you have 2 Pro Bowl / all pro caliber edge guys, to where I think they're okay with it right now. But I will say, I could see next year that there's going to be a heavy, I would say probably draft investment on the interior of the D line. I just don't think that the assets, you only have so many and you can only do so many things. And the fluidity of the situation, the way it's laid out, has been such to where this is just kind of what they've done and they've made do with it.
I also wonder too if they just it's an unglorious ask for what they want the defensive tackles to do, and there's only a certain group of guys that can actually do it the specific way they want it done, or guys that aren't going to go out there and bitch about stats or playing time or being in a rotation or stuff like that. I mean, look, this is the defensive tackle room. None of these guys really feel like the complain that they're not getting stats guys. Maybe Tim Settle would complain that he didn't get a sack or something or whatever. But
he would just say, man, I'm this close. Y'all are going to be talking to me next week.
Yeah, but like all these guys just feel like they're among the same sort of mentality of, okay, the defensive tackle position, it requires some dirty work. We know these guys will gladly accept the dirty work, and they're not going to get a ton of praise and a ton of accolades and a ton of stats out of it. It's like they all kind of fit in that sort of mentality, it feels like, too.
Yeah, and it, you know, you look at these guys, and it's a lot of veterans that have been in multiple situations, and I don't know what the data is. I don't know how they look at them. I'm actually shocked that Heinisch has been able to survive. Credit to that mofo, man. Like he is. I mean, I don't know how many times I've had him cut, but just being honest, like, I mean, did you have him on the roster the last 2?
Every training camp?
Yeah, and he's still here. So like it is just an interesting group. And I don't, again, the importance of it is, I don't think it's as high as it could be, but I do think like we'll get to a point where there'll be a heavy investment, because that's not a ton of investment in the position. While we do see them having about as much investment as, look, if you spend 80% of your salary on one element of your house, then the other elements aren't going to be as nice. When you trade multiple draft picks to go up to number 3 and get Will Anderson, and you give Danielle Hunter the most money that you've ever given a free agent, and then you give him an extension that makes him one of the top 3 highest paid edge guys, like, yeah, no shit that they're not investing much in the D tackle. They got a hell of a lot invested in the guys by them. So I do think that there's a way to look at that. And then they've also, at corner, they've invested in multiple areas with Lassiter and Stingley, and they've done it around them. Like, they've really invested everywhere except D tackle, and you can't invest everywhere. And fortunately for them, it's not an area that they heavily rely on. So if we were sitting here talking about corners and the cornerback room look like the equivalent of that, or even the edge, I would be like, oh crap. But you can't have like heavy investments and like perfect players at every single position. I think D-line just right now, with where it is logistically and where it is scheme wise, I just think that's kind of that's just kind of an area that they like to be comfortable with certain guys, and they do a good job of getting the most out of these guys. If we're being honest, we didn't expect Mario Edwards to be back. We probably didn't expect Tim Settle to do what he did last year before he kind of drifted away. Sheldon Rankins had a hell of a year 2 years ago. You know, like they do a good job at that. So if you can bring back Fatukasi, you like him. By the way, smart mofo too, by the way, that Fatukasi guy. He's kind of a joy to listen to. Very like professional I don't even know how to explain it. Very, very professional, wise guy, that Fatukasi.
Yeah, he talks about it like he works at like a Fortune 500.
Very philosophical guy.
Yeah.
So yeah,
it's also, to your point, like they have so many other investments. It's also not an expensive room. Like nobody on this defensive tackle situation makes a lot of money. Like Mario Edwards makes a lot of money for Mario Edwards, but he doesn't make like a lot of money in the grand scheme of things. And
yeah, they're not breaking bread.
Yeah, so I do wonder if they eventually go out and trust somebody that they don't know or hasn't played for them before. I do wonder if that's eventually going to be a cheap rookie. You know, they got some extra draft capital next year. You know, maybe whoever the veterans are that play well, they want to hold them over again. And then with some extra draft capital, you can invest at defensive tackle, which, to your point, not a spot they've done a serious amount of investing in.
Yeah, so the Texans achieved defensive depth, but
look, I think they've spent so much time putting depth over on defense that they don't have enough depth on offense.
If you do look at the depth, like are they deep at wide receiver now, or is it just more clear what they're going to do? Because we don't know if we don't know if Christian Kirk can still play or at what level he can play at. We don't know what Higgins and Noel are. You never know with rookies. We know Nico's going to be fine, but we also know Nico gets banged up. And then after that, you have Watson, Berrios. Like, I wouldn't say they're deep at wide receiver. I would say the picture is just more clear, and they're invested in what they're invested in, definitely for at least a year.
I mean, they're a Joe Mixon hammy away from not knowing who running back 2 is. If Nico Collins goes down, there's no dynamic player at wide receiver available to him
that we know of. We don't know what the rookies are, but yeah, I get what you're saying.
Right. Like, and then, I mean, the offensive line, they've got competition. I mean, they've got a menagerie of mediocrity on the offensive line. And so, I mean, you're a couple of key injuries. Menagerie of mediocrity.
Look at you, man. Goodness gracious.
And so they're 3 guys deep at defensive tackle, and they're screwed if Joe Mixon gets hurt. It's just kind of a weird investment. But hey, DeMeco Ryans went into this offseason. He praised the depth that the Philadelphia Eagles had on defense, talked about how deep they were and how impressive they were. And he's complained about their lack of depth for 2 offseasons in a row. So they went out there and they're deep as hell on defense, and they're not deep on offense.
Yeah, I would say that's fair. I would say that's very fair. And I mean, they're going to be rotating bodies like crazy on the D line. So yeah, that is kind of the cost. Is there a position? And then we're going from the conversation we just had to kind of like the other side of the conversation. We're trying to cover a lot of ground here on SNL. Landry Locker, Cody Stoots with you. A couple days away from rookie mini camp. We got your coverage of that right here. And we appreciate you for joining us. But like, okay, so we say all that about the D tackles, and we agree on it. And you question the depth, but there are some things that could happen at wide receiver to where you could feel great. We don't know what Woody Marks is. We know that they traded up for him, and okay, like there you go. I might elaborate on that in a second. Corner, safety, there's guys to be excited about. Is there a position with less upside than D tackle on this team? Like, even in like the best case scenario, those guys that you just laid out, pull up that D line room again. Like, what is the best case scenario here for these guys? Like, I think if Mario Edwards does what he did last year, Tim Settle does what he did last year, Sheldon Rankins is anything close to what he was 2 years ago. Kurt Heinisch is still on the team. Tafuna, whatever, Fatukasi, solid, whatever. There's nothing there where it's just like, okay, this is, even in the best case scenario, these guys could really be big parts of things this year moving forward. I think you can make a case at every other position, whether it's taking a massive step up, whether it's establishing yourself as like a potential long-term piece, even on the offensive line. Like, there is not a position where there is less upside than D tackle. Maybe tight end. You can maybe say tight end, but other than that, there's a lot of, like, as much as there's uncertainty and there's depth questions, there's a lot of exciting possibilities along the roster.
There's the best version of these defensive tackles is they're really solid. Like, That's basically the best version of the defensive tackles. And that's fine because the best version of the ends and the corners and some of the other positions is incredible. Like they had the best defensive end duo in football last year. They could do that again and be even better this year. The defensive tackle really low. I think the opportunity for excellence on the offensive line is pretty limited. They could be like in a best version of themselves. They could be fairly average, and that'd be a gigantic improvement over last year. So I could see that. But a lot of the other positions, they certainly have the ability. Like Stroud could be a top 10 quarterback. Joe Mixon could be a top 10 running back. They could have a top 5, top 8 wide receiver production overall. Tight end a little limited, obviously. And then obviously different spots on the defense. I mean, they got potential to be excellent at corner and defensive end and good, I would say, is probably the best version of the linebackers. So yeah, there's not a lot of – it's funny for a team that prides itself on the trenches, the chances that their trenches at defensive tackle, ends notwithstanding, and offensive line, the chances that those spots are excellent are almost non-existent.
Correct. I would agree with that. I would agree with that. Excellent. Yeah. If they had an excellent offensive line, my God.
They had an excellent offensive line. I'd probably pick them to go to the Super Bowl, but that's not going to, this is not in the range of outcomes that I see for these 5 guys that are going to put out there trying to block for CJ Stroud.
And as we already kind of laid out, the dependency on the D line is the D tackle is less than the other positions, like as far as like massive difference in the surroundings. So there is that. We're covering all the ground here.
One question about tight end. Dalton Schultz finished 16th at tight end receiving yards last year.
Mm-hmm.
What's the highest you could see him go this year? He had 532 yards. Gesicki was 10th with 665. So he's 133 yards away from the 10th spot. Could Schultz get
top 15 maybe?
So about where he is now.
Top 15, top 12 in a perfect world where he's used perfectly.
Yeah, 12 last year was Freiermuth, and that was 653. 653 yards feels like a dream for Dalton Schultz. I just don't know how he would do it.
Yeah, that's a fantasy land. I mean, that feels very fantasy landy.
Then that's the scary part of this is if we can't see him make a slight improvement, then where's the bottom? Like if he's not going to make a bottom.
There's no bottom as long as they're not asking him to block all the time. Like if he just is putting up those types of numbers and maybe like the guys around him are playing better, you need more production out of the position as just a whole. Like we pick on Dalton Schultz a lot, rightfully so. He sucked last year. But the position as a whole, you need more from. Like you need, I mean, if that means 35 catches spread out in like 450, 500 yards between the rest of them, okay. But like they need the position as a whole, you need more from it.
Yeah, he was, I mean, obviously the blocking stands out as a horrible portion of last year, but it felt like he left so much on the field with just failing to produce as well as just the way it looked when he was producing. It just didn't look as good as the previous year. But hey, my theory on Dalton Schultz, it's basically a contract year for him, so you might get the best version of him.
Ain't nothing basic about it. They are not running it back on that deal.
You ain't never hate.
Swarm.
Stone alone 5 times on the super chat. Shout out to you, my friend. Shout out to all the truck drivers out there doing what they do. The next thing I kind of wanted to touch on, we had some news and we're going to get into the draft in a second. What is the draft pick that you question most about the Texans? But we saw some movement at wide receiver today around the NFL. George Pickens, he is a Dallas Cowboy, 3rd round pick and a late round pick swap. George Pickens goes to Dallas. And then we saw Gabe Davis after 1 year in Jacksonville, 1 and done. Has he signed with Buffalo yet? Has it happened? I haven't looked. I know. I was going to talk about this, and I was like, okay, have they announced that he's a Buffalo Bill yet? It hadn't been announced yet. Okay.
I wonder if the Bills are mad that they picked up the wide receiver they did last week, Elijah Moore. I wonder if they're mad they have Elijah Moore because they could have just waited for Gabe Davis.
Yeah, is he back in Buffalo yet? Although he was kind of a brat when he left. He kind of was yelling at fans and stuff. So, but I think Josh Allen likes throwing to him, and he's had some big games with him. So, you would think that there's a possibility that he ends up there. So are we certain that the Texans are done at wide receiver?
I mean, could they add of notable bodies? Yes. Yes, I believe they are done. I could see one more just compete guy come in, but of notable bodies, yeah, they're done.
Yeah, they're done, and he's already waved goodbye. Cole Beasley, friend of the stream, left Twitter for a little bit. I won't talk too much about that. That's my boy Bees. But he was already like retweeting how much a professional he was and how he played hurt and all that. So I'm assuming Gabe Davis, not the biggest Jags fan.
I will say this. I kind of like the idea of George Pickens for a 3rd round pick. I mean, not after the draft, but if that was available during the draft.
No, and that's kind of what I want to ask. Like, if the Texans, like, if the draft hadn't gone their way, and let's say there was no wide receiver, like if Nick Caserio and D'Amico Ryans decided that they were willing to make this move, I think you could do a lot worse than George Pickens. He's one of the best. He's one of the 3 best vertical threats in the league. Now, some people say, well, you have to pay him. Really? Like, doesn't he have to go out there and prove it? Like, it's not like you're trading for DK Metcalf. Like, he's got to go out there and prove it. I actually think I'll say this. I think this is a good trade for both sides. Like, I think the Pittsburgh did a good job because at the draft, if you remember correctly, like George Pickens was the guy that people wanted Texans to pick, like at least in my circle. Whether it be on the flagship station or in the chats here. I don't even think I'd started the channel yet, but Pickens was the most popular name being mentioned, and they ended up going with Mechie. And Pickens kind of had a slide, but Pittsburgh, despite the occasional drama from George Pickens, they got some good ball out of him, and they end up getting a 3rd round pick. And from Dallas's perspective, I don't like to compare dumbassery to like what you do, but they did trade a 4th rounder last year for Mingo. And now they got the 3rd rounder. They got, I think, one of at least a top 3rd potential number 2 wide receiver, if not better, with a lot of upside. And he's probably going to be using you to try to get paid.
Yeah. I just, if you told me that the Texans had Jaden Higgins, George Pickens, Nico Collins, Christian Kirk, and the rest of their wide receiver room, I'd feel better about it than having Jalen Noel on this team. And I understand that they're long-term, there's usefulness to Jalen Noel, and there's the slot opportunity for Jalen Noel. I get that. George Pickens is a better wide receiver. It's a proven commodity. And yeah, the conversation about the contract, yeah, does it become a difficult conversation if he's really good? Sure. If he's really good, you're a really good football team. You'll probably be happy to pay him. Like, if Pickens was available for a 3rd, I would have rather have seen them traded the 3rd they used on Jalen Noel to go and get him than draft Jalen Noel.
Yeah, I guess. I like Noel, though, but I get what you're saying. To me, the Pickens is if you just swing and miss at wide receiver altogether. Like, let's say you get cute, and then all of a sudden, one of these teams in the back end of the 1st round takes Higgins, and then you end up like I think even if you ended up getting Noel, if you didn't get Higgins, I compare Higgins and what he can be to Pickens more so than Noel. Like, I could see even like, let's say that the Texans miss out on wide receiver and they do whatever the hell they do with that 1st, 2nd round pick, and then they end up with Noel. I could see them in the wide receiver market. And we could be talking about a tire kick on George Pickens, Amari Cooper, like Gabe Davis, like some of these other guys. So I compare it more to that. I look at Noel as almost like a luxury pick. Just kind of that's how it kind of played out.
Yeah, I mean, but I would say this: if you knew that you could have traded 79th overall for George Pickens, maybe you could have drafted a running back at 34, and you'd have had some of this depth we've talked about on the offense. You wouldn't have had to draft Woody Marks and trade a future third to get him.
Yeah,
You know?
that was.
And again, I am very much like, and I'm very much 2025 centric when it comes to how this offseason operated.
Yes, he is. Cody is just operating in a.
Well, it's the most important season that they're going to play because it's the next one. So, George Pickens is better for this team in 2025 than anything they did in the draft. Like anything. He would have been better on this team in 2025 than anything they did in the draft. And clip this and show it to me when Jaden Higgins has 1,000 yards and looks awesome. And we'll all laugh about it and be like, ha, look at the fat guy. He was wrong. Like, we'll all laugh about it. But Pickens is better than anybody they could have spent a draft pick on.
That's true. I mean, as far as like established player, yeah, that's obvious, but that's because we haven't seen him. So,
and
yeah, you do operate in a strange bubble of what are you going to do for me in 2025? What are you going to do for me in 2025? I don't want to hear about 2026. I want to hear about 2025.
Well, that's the only season they can affect is 2025.
Or 2026, depending on.
Well, you plan ahead. Next thing you know, guy's got leg surgery. He's not playing football anymore, and that's how you end up having to need wide receivers.
This effing guy.
So
SNL Landry Locker, Cody Stoots with you. Cody's just going crazy. I'm all about a good hypothetical. Cody's just taking it too far. Shout out to everyone in the chat.
Pickens is a talented player, but not a talented player that will buy in. I mean, except for the fact that he was bought in Pittsburgh, and he was pissed. They couldn't get him the football. Did Justin Fields and Russell Wilson throwing him the ball?
Yeah, I mean, we're not talking about Deontay Johnson. Like Pittsburgh didn't just like move on from him for peanuts. Like they got a good value, and they brought in DK Metcalf, who, by the way, he's throwing with Aaron Rodgers. Like, why are we even doing this speculation thing where it's like, well, Aaron Rodgers, dude, Pittsburgh knew that they were getting Aaron Rodgers 4 months ago. Like I bet months ago they knew that they were getting Aaron Rodgers, but it's just kind of a passing. It's like, yeah, well, Aaron Rodgers has actually been working out with DK Metcalf. He hasn't been working out with George Pickens. And they're like, we'll see what Aaron Rodgers decides. Hello, he's throwing the football to DK Metcalf. He's going to be a Steeler. Spoiler alert.
Yeah.
What is going on right now?
Yeah. I mean, Rodgers has done a horrible job this offseason with like, maybe I'm playing, maybe I'm not, but he loves a little bit of attention. So,
and by the way, if you can have and some people will look at it this way. I think we just kind of saw it in the chat. Shout out to everyone in the chat. But if that's a guy not working out and not buying in, and you can get 3 years of that and then get a draft pick 1 round later than when they ended up selecting him. I'm pretty sure he was in the second round, not the third. Pickens ended up going in the late second, right?
Yeah, the second rounder.
Okay, so if that's what that looks like, that's awesome. Meanwhile, the Texans have a guy who was drafted at the same time, and we don't know what they're going to do with John Mechie and how that's going to look. So that's something that they were speculating, will Pittsburgh now need a wide receiver? And maybe they want to kick the tires on John Mechie. Maybe you call Pittsburgh and see if they want to kick the tires on Mechie, and you can figure something out. I don't know. That's snowball effect. We might be getting ahead of ourselves here, but it's just that type of thing. So yeah. But George Pickens for a third round pick, not terrible.
I'd have done it. I'd have done it if I was the Texans. I mean, obviously you have to know the guy's available, and you have to be willing to the Pittsburgh has to be willing to say yes in the middle of the draft to you. But, it seems pretty clear that, and again, the reason the Cowboys did this after the draft, they liked the picks in this year's draft. They didn't care as much about future picks.
They punted on Deontay, and then they kind of stayed loyal to George Pickens. So that tells you all you need to know there. So I have a question for you. What pick draws the most questions from you when it comes to the Texans? In other words, what draft pick do you, now that we've gotten to sit on it for a couple of weeks, which of these picks do you think? Because sometimes when you make a pick, it's like, well, they could have had that guy, or they could have had this guy, or they did this. And usually it's connected to like someone who plays the same position. We always like to use the Sauce Stingley comparison, where you take a guy right before the other position. And that's kind of question. Is there any specific pick that you look at and say, this one's going to be interesting to see play out? Because there is one for me that sticks out. I haven't even run it by you, so I'm interested to hear what you say and if you're thinking along the same lines.
Well, Jalen Smith doesn't make any sense to me, just because it doesn't feel like the right price for the player. And so he draws the most questions. One, because you just fettered away a 5th round pick to move up 5 spots to get him. And I don't understand it from like how good the player's supposed to be, what else you could have used the draft pick on. And so Jalen Smith's the one that's going to have like a ton of questions for me.
Do you have anyone that you would have rather had? Is there like a?
Well, I would like to have seen him double up on running backs. I would have liked to have seen him draft a guard. I mean, a couple of offensive linemen went right after him. A couple of different wide receivers. Obviously, they'd already had 2, so you probably don't get a 3rd wide receiver. But I mean, you could have doubled up at running back and gotten a more significant, running back 2 versus Woody Marks as a 3rd down running back. You could have gotten the defensive tackle. Like, you could have done a lot of different things than draft him.
See, for me, and I see a lot of this in the chat, we'll see what it looks like. I get that he has an element that you might want to add. But Woody Marks is really, really someone that I'm going to be watching very closely. And when you have the 2 top running backs in the SEC go right after him in Hunter and Dylan Sampson, who was the SEC Offensive Player of the Year, and you also have other receiving backs that we were talking about in Smith and Blue who go later, like you can connect him to 4 guys. Like you can literally connect him to 4 guys. Like I saw a list the other day. I think it was NFL Network. So take that with a grain of salt. But I think it was Reuter maybe, and I mean, that's an eye roll, but they had Jaden Blue as potentially the most impactful day 3 pick. Samson, Cleveland doubled up on running backs. We don't really know what they're doing. And then a lot of people liked Hunter, and Smith was a guy that we thought the Texans liked. So I just think of that position. There's 4 guys that you can immediately look to and say, okay, let's see what these guys do. You also factor in that you traded up to get him. So not only did you take him before these guys, you liked him enough to where you traded up to do that. And I get that he's the all-time leading receiver in Mississippi State history. I get that he can catch the ball out of the backfield, but you need more than that. Like, so if any of these guys, like any of the previously mentioned guys, like if any of the guys that I mentioned last are better at catching the ball, that's obvious. But if he's good catching the ball, but Hunter or Sampson are just good complete backs, you basically functioned as if you feel good about what you have behind Mixon, which you can also use during a game. I know Mixon's going to have the majority of the workload, but you can also use that during a game. So they like him. They like him. They like what he provides. He's obviously had his super skill on display. We've seen it. It's produced. It's nice to have on a football team. But if you look at the 4 guys that went on that same day that we were talking about the whole time, it's not like they drafted him and said, oh God, they could have, like, we were talking about those running backs the entire time, kind of, and it's an underrated position that I think you missed out on the previous day. I think we can agree. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you got to keep a close eye on that.
Well, the toughest part about Woody Marks is you drafted a running back that can't 1-for-1 fill the exact job that Joe Mixon does if Joe Mixon's not available. And when I think about the other, you mentioned 4, and Hunter and Sampson and Blue.
Smith.
and Brashard Smith, who went, much later. I like probably 6 of the 7 guys that got drafted at the position after him. Hunter Sampson, Jaden Blue, DJ Giddens from Kansas State, Devin Neal from Kansas, Jordan James from Oregon. Like at least some of those guys, Blue's not that guy, but at least some of those guys, if Joe Mixon's not there, you put them in Joe Mixon's spot, and they have the ability to try to handle that workload. Woody Marks can't do that. Like Woody Marks is not ever going to be a running back 1 for you. Like Hunter could have spent time as an RB1. So could Sampson. So could James. So could Giddens. So could Gordon. So could Neal. Like, and you've traded a future third and spent that 4th round pick on him. It's like he has a very defined role. Like he can help you day one. What can you do for me on game day? Like I know what he could do, but there are other guys that could have done a whole lot more. So I certainly understand the questioning of Woody Marks.
What in the hypothetical world, what do you think they do if Scatabo doesn't go? Do you think they take Woody Marks, or do you think that they would have entertained the possibility of Scatabo? And by the way, if they would have passed on Scatabo for Marks, I think a lot of fans would have been a little bit pissed.
I wonder, like,
and I don't know how good Scatabo is going to be in the league, but
I wonder, they passed on Caleb Johnson, the Iowa running back, for Jalen Noel. So they drafted Jalen Noel at 79, Johnson went at 83. There weren't a ton of other running backs that went until day 4 got started. And I just wonder if maybe they had made a different decision with a number of the guys that went before Woody Marks did. So Tootin at Virginia Tech would have been intriguing, and then Scatabo would have been intriguing as well. I would have preferred Scatabo to Woody Marks because I feel like you could have still got Woody Marks later.
And it's not the thing about it is, and we'll see how he ends up. I mean, running backs, I talk about exceptions and examples are the only 2 certainties in the draft. No position is more of a prime example of that than running back. We just asked to pick a side, and they liked him enough to go get him. And even if it had just been a normal selection, it would have generated a lot of questions, but they went up there. Maybe their scouting department knows what they do. Hell, maybe he has a super skill. Maybe he is James White-esque in this offense and a valuable piece to where 5, 6, 7 years from now, we're saying, man, that dude can really catch the ball out of the backfield. And if that is the case, I do think there's more value in that than a guy that, could be a decent backup running back. So we'll see. It's really a matter of, is it a super skill or not? Is his receiving a super skill? And I guess we'll see. But you kind of put your nuts on the table when you trade up, and there's so many quote bigger names that are up there.
Yeah, I mean James White was a 4th round pick by the Patriots in 2014.
Ooh,
and he
should bring that up.
And then from the next, I mean, I was trying to think about the next time we talked to him. The next time we talked to him is training camp. So, maybe it's a Kaylee question, and it's like,
what are you going to ask him? Is he James White?
Something like that.
Dude.
What? Something like in that vein. Like what? Like
you are putting that man out there for people to just crap on him.
No.
How much they did you see in Noel?
They did that when they spent a future 3rd round pick to draft him when there were 7 other running backs that made more sense.
What do you think of the body type of Lachey versus Gronk?
But no, I think it's something along the lines of like, do you have like a standard for what you want out of a pass catching running back? And then maybe they go to James White. James White had 1,000 scrimmage yards in 2018 between running and receiving.
Dude, so. James White was a must-have on fantasy. Like it was like especially in a PPR league, you had to at least entertain the possibility of having James White. It was a given. Trill Kick X on the super chat.
You ain't never hate.
Swarm.
Would Pickens be the 2nd best wide receiver in this draft? Yes.
Behind Travis Hunter.
If we're just talking 1 year, like 1 year production, not long term. Yes, I would think so.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I would say Travis Hunter and then him.
And
JJ
he will probably be more productive this year than Travis Hunter is. Obviously, the long term for Travis Hunter's.
JJ says, why is nobody talking about Woody age? He's almost 25.
Because they're just going to use him up for 4 years and get rid of him.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what you do with third down running backs, because that's what they did. They drafted a third down running back in the 4th round.
Yeah, and someone in the chat said y'all aren't talking about his complete running. They didn't either when they drafted him. Like it's not like Caserio went up there and said, well, we really like what Woody does between the tackles, and we really think he can be a good. No, he literally went right into the receiving, which is obvious, and it's a good skill to have. So, yeah, I don't know if drafting a 25-year-old versus a 22, 23-year-old is something that they would worry about too much, especially at that point in the draft. I mean, I think you just try to get as much production as you can out of their rookie deal at that point. And I always go back to the Okoye, Amobi Okoye when he was like 12 when they drafted him. So, but yeah, I mean, 25. He's older than Will and CJ. And
I mean, here's what I would say about Woody Marks' age. It's not like he's 25 and he played 5 years of like number 1 running back in college. So yes, he's 25, but the wear and tear is not like a 5-year starter number 1 running back. It's not like he was carrying the ball like that or taking big hits. Like there's more tread on the tire than your typical 25-year-old. But unless you get really lucky with your draft pick, most of your day 3 running backs are there to be used as much as you can use them on their rookie deal. And then maybe you give them a very team-friendly deal for a couple of more seasons, and then that's it. Like most running back careers are 5 or 6 years. Like if they're good.
Oh, okay. I was like, yeah, probably lower than that, man.
Like if they're good, the most running, like Daria Gubawali still being in the league is like a huge anomaly. Like he should not still be in the league. He's done a really good job staying around and hanging around in the league, but he should not still be in the league. He should have been replaced by somebody. And like if Woody Marks is still in football in 7 years, then Woody Marks has done one hell of a job hanging around, and he's outplayed and overachieved more than 95% of running backs that are going to try to put the shield on.
Yep. So there is that. I want to ask this question because we love the local kids that end up making the NFL around here. A lot of people find themselves rooting for athletes such as Jalen Hurts when he's on the big stage, among other guys. But for whatever reason, Cam Ward hasn't gotten a lot of love. I think he is the least talked about number 1 overall pick in recent NFL history. And I want to ask you this, and I want to ask the people in the chat that probably have a rooting interest in the Texans. Does Cam Ward scare you at all? Like, do you look at Cam Ward and say, my goodness, that's going to be it's going to be really tough to have to battle Cam Ward in this division for the next few years? Because I get a sense that the answer to that is an emphatic no. I think he has to be the least hyped up, least feared number 1 overall pick that I can remember.
I would say this is a twofold approach. One, the Titans couldn't have done anything at number 1 that would have made me feel threatened by the guy. Like if they had the next Lawrence or the next Bryce Young or the next, like I wouldn't feel threatened by that because I don't believe in the organization. They stink. So I think that's probably the biggest gripe of like if Cam Ward had gone to, if the Colts had the number 1 pick and they got Cam Ward, I'd be terrified. Like I'd be beside myself, be like, oh crap, they finally figured it out. But the other element to this is I just don't know like what is threatening to the Texans in the next few years. Like, he upsets you once this year and then he turns into the next Jaden Daniels, the next CJ Stroud. I just feel like the likelihood of that happening is pretty low after we saw what CJ Stroud and Jade Daniels did. I just don't think he's going to be the next really good quarterback, to be a high draft pick and get it going right away. And then everybody get real excited about him. I just feel like history works against him.
See, I think that this is kind of a symbol of just kind of the luck that the Texans have had. And there's no shame in having luck. Like I think sometimes you need it. And I think you can function as a solid organization. And sometimes if the luck just doesn't align with you, then you find yourself kind of out of luck. Because let's say that the Texans end up trading Deshaun Watson in 20. Let's say that they trade him before the 2020 draft or whatever, or 2021 is
before
the 2021 draft. Excuse me. He played in the COVID year, 2020. But in 2021, they end up trading Deshaun Watson, and they find themselves drafting between Trey Lance, Mac Jones, and Zach Wilson. Like, that kind of sucks. Let's say that they end up trading him, and then they end up needing a quarterback in the draft that had Pickett and Malik Willis. That kind of sucks. Mm-hmm. The Texans happen to suck, and the Texans happen to have a top 2 pick when you had Bryce Young and you had CJ Stroud.
Yep.
So they kind of got a little bit lucky there, and they had a top 2 pick instead of number 4, where you end up with Anthony Richardson, which is the case with Indianapolis. Then the next season, like, if the Titans had sucked that year, and let's say they were one of the 3 worst teams in the league, they're picking between Caleb Williams, Drake May, and Jaden Daniels. Those are their 3 options. And I know you say the organization sucks, but a franchise quarterback can be the lipstick on the pig of the most piggiest organization. And we all know Amy Adams Stank is the biggest pig since Miss Piggy. So you can easily do that. Like, you can easily overcome that. But in this draft, like, it's just kind of an example of sometimes it's good luck. I use the Rockets as the example, and I know there's like a snowball effect, and they wouldn't have Amen Thompson, but I mean, if they end up getting Cade Cunningham instead of Jalen Green, and they move up 1 spot, or if they end up getting Paulo Banchero instead of Jabari Smith, then I mean, who knows? I mean, I don't think they're done right now in the playoffs. I think they're probably still playing. So even if you do everything well, even if the Titans were a good organization like the Steelers, it sometimes you just it's luck when it comes to the right time to get a quarterback.
I feel like he is very much in a worse, I feel like he's in a situation that's even worse than what Caleb Williams dealt with last year. They are bad. And it's going to take some wholesale changes in Nashville to figure it out for him. So even if he's good, they're still going to have to fix some things around there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Their offensive line sucks. Their skill position players are not that impressive. Their defense has about 3 guys that are worth a crap. Their coach is a nothing. Their coach is a nothing.
Yeah, we don't know what this guy is.
I know he has the least presence of any of the coaches in the National Football League because he's randomly just been standing next to me at the combine like 10 times. And I'm like, oh, there's Callahan. There he is.
You ain't never hate.
Swarm.
HDAV Traveler, afternoon to you, my friend, a.k.a.
Good
Austin
to see you.
Jack.
Thanks for
Austin
jumping in.
Jack, doing his thing. So, yeah, I have no idea. Like, the Cam Ward thing is just kind of but I do think there's some intrigue with Hunter and Warren and what those guys end up doing. So there is that.
Yeah,
so we'll see where that goes.
To add to your Texans' luck with the other teams, and when the Jaguars had the top pick and they picked the wrong guy a couple years ago, they picked freaking Trevon Walker instead of Aiden Hutchinson. Yeah,
that was just stupidity, though. That wasn't luck. That was just dumb.
Well, the Texans are lucky that the Jaguars are stupid, which is, the Texans have benefited from everybody in the AFC South's all had kind of some. This organization's stupid for doing this, and they've all kind of benefited from it at different times.
No, it's really funny because if you look at, is there another we can go back to Andrew Luck when he was drafted, whatever year that was. I don't think is there any other division during that time that is everybody's had the number one pick? There's no way. There's no way. There's a 0% chance. There's definitely that. Well, the Texans haven't got it. Well, then we can go back to Clowney even.
Yeah, because Luck was 2012.
Yeah, then Clowney even. You feel like the Texans had the number one pick because right now CJ looks better than Bryce. So that's what that is. But if you look at the AFC South, like Luck, Clowney, Lawrence, Trevon Walker, and then Cam Ward. So you've had all these number one picks. There's no way during that time, like since Clowney, that every team in a division has had the number one pick. No way.
I get list them off to you right here. I'm looking at it. Buccaneers, so that's the South, and then the Panthers, that's the South.
Atlanta didn't have it. Yep.
The Rams, so that's the West, and then the Cardinals, so that's the West.
Kyler.
The Browns twice, but no other AFC North teams. Oh no, I'm sorry, the Bengals. So the Browns twice, and then the Bengals, and then the Bears.
Yeah.
So since Luck, it's been the NFC South, the West, AFC North, NFC West, AFC North, AFC South, NFC South, NFC North, and then AFC South again.
Yep.
Ooh. Yeah. Now, obviously, the number one pick is not the end. I'd be interested to know how many of these teams drafted QBs in like the top 4 or 5, because think about it. The Texans, they ultimately got CJ, but around there, the Titans have made their investments at quarterback. The Colts had made the investment in Anthony Richardson after Andrew Luck. And then the Jaguars with Blake Bortles in 2014 and then Trevor Lawrence. Might be a little off-season project.
Yep. Good old Trevor, man. Comeback season for Trevor. We're not hearing much about him. It's kind of sailed. That national lust, that's going to be a package deal. That's going to be like the Cohen and Lawrence like bond. I think the number one national attraction right now is Travis Hunter, like in the division. I think he's probably going to get the most attention. I mean, we see Colorado, like the hype is not proportional to production. So it's not production benefit. Now, in his case, he's a hell of a player, but like Deion's like a 500 coach. We saw what the league thought of Shador Sanders, and they get all the attention. But Travis Hunter's really, really good. And there's also going to be the element of defense, offense. Like if he has a PBU and then he has like a catch, there's going to be that whole element. So I do think that in the AFC South is probably one of the least most nationally attractive divisions. I think Travis Hunter might actually be the main attraction right now.
I will be interested to see if the Travis Hunter hype alone gets them maybe an early Thursday night game when the schedule comes out next week.
Yeah, because it's not a rule you have to have one anymore.
Yeah. Like, I don't know if Travis Hunter and being super excited for him gets you a Sunday night or Monday night football, but it could get them an early Thursday night football game for sure.
We're getting the schedule drop very soon.
Week from today. Little schedule drop. Week from today. We'll have a normal SNL show, and then we'll be live when the schedule drops.
Yeah, the schedule drop's going to be sick. Always like that. The timing, the buy. I will say this. I don't think the Texans like that late buy too much last year.
No, they did not.
They hated. I don't think that I've ever seen a team hate a schedule as much as the Texans did. Like when they actually were in the amidst it. First of all, the Hall of Fame game, that's cute, but they had to start early.
It adds like a month, extra month to your situation.
They hated it because they had to travel, do all that. Then you had like every single primetime game that you could possibly have. And this was after having all noon games except one. They got flexed the final week of the season. And they hated that Hall of Fame game, and they hated the late buy. Like there were some passive aggressive mentions of that. They hated.
Well, and that late buy got added into the fact that two of the most difficult teams in the entire conference, you played them in 5 days apart. You played them on a Saturday and a Wednesday.
Yeah, and I actually thought Patrick brings up the 10-day gauntlet. I actually thought the 10-day gauntlet was a favorable part of the schedule because a lot of teams had to play the 10-day gauntlet, but you got Miami coming off the bye. When you played Baltimore on Christmas, they had the same layoff that you did. And then coming off the bye 1 week, you got to go to Kansas City. So a lot of people were pointing to that stretch. I actually thought that stretch was kind of favorable for them, given the fact that you were going to have to play those teams no matter what. And I know Baltimore beat their ass. I don't think there's any scenario where the Texans can beat Baltimore. For some reason, Baltimore just owns them. Well, that reason is they're better. But if you're going to face them, facing them on the short week of Christmas is probably ideal when they have to come to your place, even though they beat that ass.
Yeah, I would have just rather faced them on a normal Sunday. Like, if I'm D'Amico Ryans and company, I'd rather just finish on a Sunday. Next Sunday's the Chiefs. Finish on that Sunday. Next Sunday's the Ravens. Like, that'd have been way better.
Yeah, it would have been, but I don't think there's an ideal spot. So
I've got to imagine they're not going to be on Christmas after that goose egg last year.
Yeah, I would hope not. I really didn't enjoy it. So
I don't think the only people that enjoyed it lived in Baltimore.
Yep, didn't love it. Wasn't fun. Didn't like Netflix. Not quite ready for the big time when it comes to the football stuff and the streaming.
Well, get ready because they're gonna keep getting more and more of it.
Yeah, they will. Some good stuff on Netflix. You should check out the Gilbert Arenas shooting guards.
Shooting guards.
Javaris Crittenton. Look, I'll let you watch it itself, but it's a big eye roll for me.
That's probably one of the better.
It's a big eye roll for me.
That's one of the better names that they have had for that Untold series. And
I respect Gilbert for not being a snitch and letting Javaris tell his own story. But that's a big eye roll for me.
That Untold does a pretty good job of
yeah, they let Javaris tell his own story. Like if you're to believe everything that Javaris said, he was basically
I thought he was dead.
Now he's out of jail.
Didn't they have a teammate that had a gun charge or something? Wasn't there another Wizards player that died?
Just watch the thing.
Or maybe Critterton was involved in a murder. That's what
one of my best friends and roommates in college. He grew up with and was best friends with someone who started with Javaris at Georgia Tech. And despite the way that Javaris talks, you would think that he never did anything and there was no sign of him like potentially being about it until the Gilbert Arenas thing. I kind of thought they made it look like Gilbert Arenas did everything. There was some bad luck, but just watch it and say, okay, this guy's either the most unlucky guy in the world or there's kind of some untold things going on here with Javaris. Just watch it. Strong recommendation. It's an hour and a half of your time. Check it out. Pretty fascinating.
Oh, man, I was kind of hoping it checked in at 60 minutes, but I'll give it 90.
Yeah, give it 90. All right, so we will be on the scene at rookie minicamp. The rookies will be there tomorrow. They're only giving the media one day. How about that? I mean, geez, they're only giving us one day, so it is what it is. And we got you covered. We'll let you know what's going on with the rookies, and we'll also keep a close eye on what's going on with the Texans. I think tomorrow probably Gabe Davis will be a Bill, maybe not. Who knows? But we hardly knew you here in the AFC South. Be sure to subscribe. Be sure to like. Be sure to ride along. Be sure to always remember when it comes to this Texan stuff, we're all in it together.
Eat good, sleep good, be good. We'll talk Texans again soon. Thanks for watching, everybody.